Chapter 2 of A Copper Harvest by a Self-Made Man. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 2 The Copper Specimens. The man sat up on the slab where, like many other unfortunate wretches, he had been placed preparatory to a post-mortem. He stared wildly around him, not comprehending the circumstances in which he was placed. There was a little of the brandy left in the graduating glass, and Charlie held it to his lips. He gripped the boy's hands with his two great rough fists, almost crushing the glass, and eagerly drained the liquor off. Then he coughed, blinked his eyes, and sliding off the table, stood up. He would have fallen, for he was as helpless as a scarecrow, but Charlie caught and supported him. "Feel better now, do you?" asked the doctor's son. "Yes, kinder so. Only I feel plaguely weak, and I'm stone cold." Charlie assisted him to the only chair in the surgery. "What's been the matter with me, and where am I? This is a doctor's shop, isn't it?" he added, looking around and observing the bottles and instruments. "You were brought here this morning," explained Charlie. "This morning?" exclaimed the man, looking up at the lamp in its bracket. "And is it night now?" "That's what it is." "I must have been a long time out of my head then, youngster," he said with a look of perplexity on his features. "You were more than that." "How's that?" "You fell down, to all appearance dead, at the Muggings farm, 3 miles outside of town, and you were brought here to wait an inquest." "Fell down dead?" gasped the stranger with a look of blank dismay. "That's right. If you hadn't come to under the influence of that battery, which my chum suggested applying to you because you looked so lifelike, my father would have carved you up in the morning to find out what caused your death." "Why, the great horn spoon!" cried the man, who had apparently been snatched from the grave by the experiment of Jack Howard. "I knowed it would come to this some day. I'm subject to epileptic fits, and I've always afeared I'd be buried alive in one of them." "You've had a narrow escape," chipped in Jack, highly pleased at the success of his galvanic treatment. "I guess I had," admitted the man, breathing hard and looking around him with a fearsome expression. "I'm very grateful to you young chaps for what you've done for me." "Don't mention it," replied Jack. "We're mighty glad we were able to pull you around. If you don't mind, we should be pleased to know who you are." "My name is Gideon Prowl. I'm a prospector and miner by occupation, but just at the present I guess I ain't much better than a tramp. I'm out of luck, that's all. But I've seen the time when I was worth a cool 100,000, but I spent it on drink at the gaming table, and I was robbed of a good bit of it, and that's the whole story. I've been a blame fool, but I hope to do better yet before I die. I know something that ought to be worth another 100,000 to me, and when I realize on it I shan't forget you young fellows, not by a jugful." "You needn't worry about us," said Charlie cheerfully, winking at Jack, as if it was his opinion the man had wheels in his head. "We don't expect to be paid for what we did for you." The man saw the wink and was evidently offended. "Look here, my lads," he said gruffly. "You think because I look like a tramp that I'm a regular hobo. Maybe that I'm talking through my hat. I reckon I can prove what I say." Then he began looking around the room. "I had a grip with me this morning. Do you know what became of it?" "I guess that's it over in the corner," said Charlie, pointing. "I took a hold of it a while ago, and I must say it's precious heavy. What have you got in it, gold?" he continued with a grin. "Fetch it here, and I'll show you," said Prowl. Charlie brought it forward and laid it at the man's feet. The stranger started to bend down to undo the straps, but fell back in the chair with a groan. "Give me another drink," he gasped plaintively, while the perspiration indicative of physical weakness appeared on his forehead. Charlie rushed into the shop for more brandy and returned in a moment. Gideon Prowl gulped it down at a draught, and it brought him instant relief. "That's good stuff, and it warms me innards nicely," he said, smacking his lips with a sigh of satisfaction. "It's the best in Sackville," said Charlie. "It's none of your common saloon firewater. No, sir, that is kept exclusively for the sick." "I believe you," said the Westerner. "Now, if I might ask you another favor, it would be in the shape of something to eat. I'm most famished. Ain't had a mouthful since yesterday afternoon." "Sure thing," replied Charlie with alacrity. "I ought to have thought of that myself. Meyer," he called, stepping to the surgery door. The German boy poked his head into the room in fear and trepidation. "What have you done with the corpse?" he asked, seeing the slab vacant. Then, as his eyes roved to the chair, his hair almost stood on end with fright. "Mein Gott! What is that?" "Don't be a fool, Meyer," said Charlie impatiently, grabbing him in time to prevent him making a bolt. "The man is not dead. He was only in a trance, and we brought him out of it with the battery." "So," replied the German boy, gazing at the stranger in fearful wonderment. "He been in those trances under the sheet their whole lifelong day, ain't it? What a great things those battery was, I bet you. Go into the house, Meyer, and see what you can pick up in the pantry in the way of cold bite. Fetch a jug of milk from the cellar." Meyer opened the door leading to the garden and looked out. The storm had passed over the town by this time and was receding in a northwesterly direction. "You'll find the entry door unlocked, Meyer," added Charlie. "See that you don't make any unnecessary noise." "I will look out, I bet you," replied Dinkelspiel. "If I woke the cook up, I wouldn't hear the last of it pretty soon, I think." And he vanished into the night. Gideon Prahl, feeling better after the reaction, began undoing the straps of his grip. Then he fumbled in his pocket for the key. After taking out a somewhat rumpled shirt, a suit of underclothes, and a couple of pair of socks, Prahl said, "Now, young gents, I'm going to show you some of the finest specimens of real virgin copper ever dug out of Mother Earth." "Oh!" exclaimed Charlie, a slight shade of disappointment in his voice. "I thought it was gold or silver or quartz you had there. But copper?" "Young man," said Prahl, diving one hairy paw into his grip and fishing out a magnificent specimen of raw copper, "look at that and hold your breath. There is 90% of copper in that hunk. Think of that. It is only to be separated from its rocky matrix. Then it is ready for market. That chunk, just as I took it from the mine, where there are thousands and thousands of tons of it waiting to be dug out, is almost chemically pure copper. That mine, young gentlemen, is a marvel. There's millions in it. Nothing in this country to match it, outside of the great Calumet and Helka mine of Michigan, which has an annual production of 50 million pounds. Jack Howard examined the specimen with great interest. "Where's this mine you speak of?" Gideon Prahl winked one eye expressively and moistened his lips with his tongue. "It's in Montana," he said with a significant grin. "That's a pretty big state," said Jack. "Whereabouts in Montana?" "That's my secret," said Prahl, "and I'm going to Chicago to sell it." "Then you have really located a valuable copper deposit?" asked Jack with kindling eyes, for he had a strong enthusiasm for anything connected with mines and minerals. "That's the size of it, young gent. It's an old deserted surface copper mine that was originally worked after a rude fashion by the Injuns, or some other folks who didn't know its value. There's millions of pounds there waiting for modern methods to bring it up to the light of day." Jack and Charlie looked at the several rich specimens Prahl laid out for their inspection, and then at one another. Evidently this tramp-like man, whom they had so strangely brought back to life, had stumbled on to a good thing. Both of the boys had read stories of similar good things having been discovered by the merest accident, and the tales had excited their imagination at the time. But this was different. Here was evidence of a thrilling fact, and this prospect of sudden wealth, as it were, could not fail to have its effect on the two lads. At this point Meyer made his appearance with an abundant cold repast, which, being placed before the stranger, he attacked like a famished wolf. End of chapter 2.